What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you a random Sunday upload because I feel like it. And this is a deck in the standard format centered around Zygarde-EX and Regirock. And this was an idea that I admit I did not come up with on my own. I got this idea from Luke Kirkham, I believe, Kirkham. I think that's how you say that. And I saw in the Sheffield Regional that he was running a Turbo Zygarde deck. And honestly, recently fighting has been a type that I've just kind of disregarded almost completely. I felt that in the current standard format, it just doesn't have the firepower, well, pun not intended. It doesn't have like the ability to keep up with some of the top tier decks, and particularly Zygarde, having the weakness to grass makes it weak against Decidueye or just grass Pokemon in general, who seem to be dominating the format overall, which just kind of makes this deck a lot less viable and potentially successful than it could have been in other formats. However, when I saw Luke use this deck, I saw his build was very different from a lot of other Zygarde builds I've seen. I mean, it's a Zygarde build that runs Max Elixir, and usually I would see Zygarde builds that would focus on just like manually attaching each turn and then just using each attack in succession, like using Lance Pulse, then Cellstorm, then Land's Wrath if you can get it off. However, Max Elixir and the single copy of Energy Switch changed the dynamic of this deck quite a bit, to where I saw it and I was like, I gotta do this. So thank you, Luke, for making such an awesome deck, and I did take some liberties. I tried to replicate this deck as best I could, however I couldn't find an official deck list posted. So if you guys can find the deck list, please let me know and leave it in the comment section below so I can put it into the description so that people can see where the original idea came from. But nonetheless, I tried to replicate it as much I could with a few creative liberties that I took here and there. But yeah, before I get into the deck, I mean, I know it's been 2 minutes, but the normal like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video. And as for the question of the day, because this is just going to be kind of a chill, because I feel like it, I don't really have a particular question of the day. But I mean, if you guys want to just tell me anything exciting happened during this past week, or do you have anything exciting coming up in this coming week, let me know in the comment section down below. I mean, this is a Sunday. It's a end of the week, beginning of a new one, so might as well reflect on the last week and look forward to the week coming. So yeah, let me know if anything exciting happened or if you have anything exciting planned. But on to the deck. Like I said, this is very much similar to Luke Kirkham's build. I maybe differ by a couple cards, but like I said, I tried to watch the match as much as I could to figure out what different tech cards he was running, and I think I got the majority of them. However, I know that there are differences in certain spots, but main card it's centered around is Zygarde-EX with 3 different attacks for 3 different energy costs. Just basically the goal of this deck: hit with low energy attacks, deny your opponent prizes, and yeah, just focus on those small attacks building up over time to be able to take you prizes. And then, of course, fighting Pokemon have so many different ways of powering up their attacks. Fighting Fury Belt, Regirock, Strong Energy, there used to be Fighting Stadium. But like I said, normally, I know I said like 30 different times, but normally, as I alluded to earlier, fighting decks of this style rely on like just single energy attachments, but Max Elixir and Energy Switch really do make Zygarde be able to hit for like a Cellstorm turn 1, which, I mean, there's a huge difference between 40 and 60 damage. I know that you're like, oh, that's only 20 damage, but that's actually pretty significant in a lot of different matchups and with a lot of different maths that come up. So I mean, it's very cool style of deck, and I'm very excited to try it out. As for the other Pokemon, 3 Shaymin, just because, I mean, Shaymin draws you a bunch of cards, and yeah, I mean, if you're running a bunch of EXs, we're going to be running Hoopa, so a single Hoopa can turn into a Zygarde, Regirock, and Shaymin. And yeah, I'm running 3. I'm not sure if this is the number Luke runs, however, I found that having 2 Shaymin prize can often leave you without extra draw support when you need it, especially with running a lower number of draw supporters. So that's why I decided to go with a little bit higher number of Shaymin. I mean, this could be the number that he's running. I'm not sure. Like I said, I was only able to get the deck list from what I could see from the video. One thing that Luke added, which I'm a huge fan of, is one copy of Tauros-GX. Now, you might be looking at the list and wondering, why the heck would you be running Tauros if you're only running Fighting Energy? Well, that's because of Max Elixir, actually. So Tauros, usually you only run it with a DCE, because you can slap it on there and immediately Rage, Horn Attack, Mad Bull, GX, all of that stuff. Well, in this deck, we just have regular energy, so you have to manually attach twice to Tauros in order for it to be able to attack. Well, what Tauros can do is you can put it up there, you can slap a Fighting Fury Belt on it, all of a sudden it has 220 HP, it is not going anywhere, and you're able to just let that take hits, let it rack up damage with Horn Attack and Rage, and Tauros actually synergizes quite nicely with this deck, because this deck doesn't normally take big one-hit knockouts. That's not what it's focused on. It's focused on little chip damage here and there, being able to, like, just slap a single energy down on a Zygarde or Hitmonchan to finish a Pokemon off, and finish a Pokemon off that your opponent had been building up energy on to take out your Zygarde, and then just be able to continually stream attacks every single turn. Tauros allows you to buy a turn or two by just setting it up there, putting an energy on it, passing, let your opponent attack it, then all of a sudden you can Mad Bull GX for just a huge knockout, or Horn Attack for 60 if your opponent decides not to attack, or even just Rage if you've already used your GX attack. So Tauros just synergizes very nicely with this deck. Yeah, it can't use Regirock or Strong Energy, but there's enough fighting to make it actually kind of useful. One liberty that I took that I did not see in Luke's list at all, but I decided that I definitely wanted to put in this deck, was a single copy of Evolution's Hitmonchan. Now you might be thinking, well wait, why wouldn't you just attack with Zygarde? I mean, it hits harder. Well, given that the Stadium is in play, it hits harder for 1 damage, but a Stadium's almost always in play. Hitmonchan utilizes Fighting Fury Belt, same as Zygarde, utilizes Strong Energy, same as Zygarde, it just hits for 10 damage weaker. Why would you do that? Well, that's because the single prize Hitmonchan throws off the prize trade quite a bit. You can see I'm running all 2 prize attackers in this deck, except for the Hitmonchan. The Hitmonchan is a mon that I can slap down, throw a Strong Energy on, hit for like 70 damage. Let's say there's 2 Regirock in play, which is very, very attainable and usually is what you have. Slap down a Hitmonchan, slap a Strong Energy on it, all of a sudden you're hitting for 70 damage for a single energy. And if your opponent knocks out Hitmonchan, no big deal. They're no closer to winning the game just because they still have to knock out 3 of your EX or 3 of your 2 prize attackers in order to be able to win the game. So Hitmonchan is very nice for throwing off the prize trade, also throwing off the ends that your opponent gets, because if they knock out the Hitmonchan, they're taking they're drawing 1 less card off an end, but at the same time, they still are no closer to winning because, like I said, they still have to knock out 3 2 prize Pokemon to win the game. So Hitmonchan is a Pokemon that I just threw in there to try it out, have not been disappointed. Regirock, of course, boosts the power of our fighting Pokemon, so basically just boost the 1 and 2 energy attacks of Zygarde and the jab from Hitmonchan. Hoopa to search out Zygarde, Regirock, and Shaymin. As for the items, I'm going to come back to Energy Switch just because that's a card that I really, really like and want to talk about a little more. 1 Escape Rope, because all of our Pokemon have pretty heavy retreat costs except for Shaymin of 1. I mean, Hitmonchan has 2, Tauros has 3, Zygarde and Regirock both have 3, Hoopa has 2, so we have a bunch of Pokemon that we really might not necessarily want active in a certain moment. So Escape Rope is one way to not only disrupt our opponent and get out something that they might have on the bench that they want to keep there, but also getting our Pokemon out of the active spot that we don't want there. 4 Max Elixir makes this deck a lot faster and changes the kind of the outlook and the way this deck is played. I mean, it's more of a try to hit harder, hit faster than the single energy attachments, which allows this deck to, I wouldn't say necessarily compete with those super strong turn 1 like Decidueye Vileplume decks, but at least have a fighting chance if they don't draw perfectly. For Trainers Mail and Ultra Ball, I mean, just kind of standard Trainers Mail for consistency. Ultra Ball gets you the Pokemon that you want when you want, and VS Seeker to reuse all of our supporters. And actually, VS Seeker is huge in this deck. I mean, I know VS Seeker is usually big in a lot of decks, but VS Seeker is particularly big in this deck because of how many tech supporters you have and how many times you want to reuse your tech supporters. So VS Seeker, definitely save them and preserve them if you're going to use this deck. And then on to the Energy Switch. This card is huge. I mean, plain and simple, I love the single Energy Switch that Luke put in this deck. Now, if I was building the deck, would not have put that in there. Luke put that in there, and that opens up so many different plays, like I have said. I mean, Core Enforcer turn 1 is very different than Lance Pulse turn 1. Also being able to heal that damage off just from that. And then you can also potentially Horn Attack turn 1. I mean, on paper, I can't necessarily like say exactly what plays that Energy Switch opens up apart from just like better turn 1 attacks. But in the middle and late game, Energy Switch really does change things quite a bit. And all of a sudden you go from a Zygarde with 2 energy with like 180 damage on it, switch out to a Zygarde, slap an energy down, Energy Switch the other energy onto it, and you have a fresh Zygarde with 2 energy immediately. So that's the type of plays that Energy Switch opens up. I highly recommend not taking this out of the deck if you try it. As for the stadiums, running two different stadiums. One Parallel City just to kind of limit the bench space. I mean, get rid of the Shaymin and the Hoopa on our end, or limit our opponent's bench space, while also reducing the damage that their fire, water, and grass attackers can do to us. And then Scorched Earth helps out a little bit with the draw support. And then as for the supporters, 3-1 of Ed and Sycamore as the main draw support, and then we just have a bunch of tech supporters, which I think is really awesome. 2 Lysandre, because Lysandre is, I mean, Lysander's Lysandre, plain and simple. 1 Hex Maniac to slow down the grass decks, keep them from being able to use Shaymin turn 1, also be able to shut off Feather Arrow, be able to reuse our items after Vileplume comes down, that type of thing. Huge, huge, huge card in this deck. Same with Olympia, being able to switch out. It's another way of switching our active Pokemon out and healing damage. A big thing about this deck is prize denial. Be able to heal Zygarde with Olympia and Pokemon Center Lady, and then also Cellstorm. Zygarde's longevity becomes ridiculous, so these 2 cards are crucial for that. Kukui gets you an extra 20 damage and 2 cards, which again, 20 damage is gigantic for a lot of the different math that comes up when using this deck. So, I mean, all of these tech supporters have come in huge in one way or another for me, so I highly recommend just trying this list as is, or finding Luke's exact list and trying that, because all of these cards are in there for a very well thought out and specific reason. 3 Fighting Fury Belt just gives longevity to our attackers. 2 Float Stone keeps our Regirock from being Lysandre active and just stuck there. 1 Power Memory, so we're able to use All Cells Burn. I don't know why, I've been calling this Core Enforcer recently, and so if I do that during the live, I apologize, but it's All Cells Burn. Just gives Zygarde a much bigger attack if we need to be like, okay, that Pokemon is completely fresh and it's kind of annoying, I need to one-shot that thing. All Cells Burn is a good way of just being like, okay, that Pokemon just needs to go, need to get rid of it, that type of thing. 4 Strong Energy, just have that when we need it, be able to power up our single and double energy attacks, and heck, even I almost called it Core Enforcer right there. All Cells Burn and Land's Wrath. And then 7 of the regular Fighting Energy to potentially get Max Elixir to work. I mean, Max Elixir doesn't always work. In fact, you fail it quite a bit in this deck. However, when you hit it, it is just that much more significant in many different cases. So that's why we're running 7 of the regular Fighting Energy. Again, don't know if this is Luke's exact list. I tried to replicate it as much as I could and go with good numbers on certain cards. So yeah, I've talked for way too long. I know I said this was going to be chill, and it's going to be like a 40-minute video, so sorry about that, but let's go ahead and see this deck in action. Alrighty, we have found one against Flint Sykes with a grass and normal deck, so considering this looks like Decidueye Vileplume, Lurantis Vileplume, I mean, it looks like something Vileplume with a grass attacker, so we are going to be in a very, very bad spot from the beginning, and we're in an even worse one considering what I start with. Really would have preferred to start with a, you know, actually a Zygarde or something that I can attack with. But I mean, I at least have a workable hand. The thing is, do I want to draw supporter or will I want a Hex Maniac? So this is 100% confirmed to be a Vileplume deck. Probably Decidueye Vileplume based on the Lugia, but I draw Tauros. That thing's actually going to be pretty solid for me. So what I am going to do is Hoopa, grab probably a Zygarde, Regirock, and Shaymin. Zygarde just so I can have a 1 energy attacker up and ready to go. So even though I'm not going to be hitting the Lugia, well, even though I'm going to be hitting the Lugia for resistance, the Regirocks will be able to cancel it out for me. So I'm going to play the Where do I want to play the Fighting Fury Belt? On the Tauros or on the Zygarde? I think I just want to play it onto the Tauros, because I think Tauros is actually going to be... no, Zygarde, because Zygarde is what I'm going to be attacking with later. I can always just Hex Maniac to get rid of the... I can always Hex Maniac to... What am I trying to say? I can always Hex Maniac to be able to use items again, play the Fighting Fury Belt onto the Tauros, and I get a Trainer's Mail, so that's pretty nice. I can obviously... So, okay, so I drew the Float Stone, which is really, really nice. I whiffed the Max Elixir. I mean, that's kind of almost expected in this deck, but I am going to retreat, or Escape Rope, rather, into my Zygarde. I could have retreated, but I wanted to force my opponent to have a Float Stone, and then I'm going to Hex Maniac, because that will potentially slow down my opponent from being able to play supporters next turn. Or, I mean, not supporters, be able to play, like, Shaymins, have an explosive start, and at the very least, it'll keep my opponent from being able to play, from being able to use Feather Arrow with Decidueye. And we see that my opponent's playing a Professor Birch's Observations, so that's pretty interesting. My opponent does just attach and retreat into Lugia, and he doesn't attack. That's really weird that my opponent wouldn't have attacked. But either way, I am just going to Sycamore, get a fresh hand, get a Fighting Fury Belt. First things first, going to play the Strong Energy onto my Zygarde. Fighting Fury Belt up. The Shaymin, just so that's not as easy of a prize for Decidueye to pick off. Then I am just going to Lance Pulse the Lugia for 70 damage. Yeah, he'll be able to X-Ball me for some decent damage, but I mean, I have the Pokemon Center Lady, I have the Lysandre. What's awesome about this deck is you're able to attack for 1 or 2 energy based on the attacker that you decide to go with. So you really don't need to use your supporter for draw supporters every single turn. Of course, the phone starts ringing once again as soon as I start trying to record. It hasn't been ringing all morning, but as soon as I get into a match, I hate this. I'm sick of this. But either way, I mean, I do have the Pokemon Center Lady and the Lysandre as well as 2 VS Seekers to be able to play another Hex Maniac next turn if I so choose. My opponent will not be able to hit me. I mean, he'll be able to hit me for 70 damage, which is decent, but the combination of Cell Storm and PCL should be able to put me in a pretty solid position. We do see the Decidueye. My opponent will get a Decidueye GX up, so with Feather Arrow and X-Ball, he'll be able to hit me for some pretty decent damage. So now the question is, do I want to PCL or do I want to Hex Maniac? First things first, I'm going to attach another energy so I can Cell Storm, and I'm actually this turn going to Lysandre in the Decidueye and then grab a Hex Maniac with the VS Seeker in case my opponent gets a Vileplume. I'm trying to buy some time right now, and I mean, even though I won't be able to two-shot, well, I won't be able to two-shot with Cell Storm, I will be able to two-shot next turn when I attach the final fighting energy onto my Zygarde, and he will be able to just switch right out into his Lugia, be able to hit me for 20 more with the Feather Arrow, and then 80 more with the Arrow Ball. And here's the question. I can obviously knock out the Decidueye if I Lysandre that thing up. But at that point, I will lose all my energy, and my opponent will have 2 prizes next turn from being able to knock me out with Arrow Ball. So I think the play right now is to try to deny my opponent prizes, because my opponent doesn't have any draw at this point. Instead of onto the Zygarde, because I won't be able to knock out the Lugia, even if I do attach a Strong Energy onto my Zygarde. At least I think so. At least I don't think so. Yeah, I am just going to play it onto the Tauros, and then do I want a Center Lady or Hex Maniac? Center Lady potentially avoids a knockout, but if my opponent gets a DCE off of his top deck, then he can knock me out. However, I'm going to force him. I'm going to force my opponent into a position where even a Feather Arrow plus a Feather, let's see, that puts me at 100. So he needed to draw another DCE. Even just a regular energy would not have been enough to knock me out. So I did play this right. I do have the other energy. What I can do is, do I want a Pokemon Center Lady again, or do I want to just Hex Maniac? I think the play is to Hex Maniac, because I still have 40 HP on my Zygarde. if my opponent draws into a DCE, he knocks me out. Nothing I can do about that. But if my opponent... This way my opponent can't just knock me out with 2 consecutive Feather Arrows. By Self-Storming plus Hex Maniacing, my opponent can't do anything. He does just draw and pass. I'm pretty sure I'm just in a position to win, because what I can do is Lysandre up the Decidueye, knock it out with a Land's Wrath, and go from there. I don't think I want to... Yeah, I want to play the Parallel City to get rid of the Hoopa and the Shaymin on my side, just because those are things that can be Lysandred up and really don't do anything once I've already played them down. So let's go ahead and get rid of the Hoopa and the Shaymin, get rid of those potential Lysandre targets to stall, knock out my opponent's Decidueye with a Land's Wrath, take 2 more prizes, and just be in a position to pretty much win the game in the upcoming turns. My opponent does promote his Lugia. He has to top deck a DCE. He gets a Revitalizer, so he will be able to get another Decidueye, which will put 20 more damage onto my Zygarde. But, oh, right, I countered his Stadium, so inadvertently, Parallel City, my play with Parallel City worked out beautifully. And yeah, I was able to take the game against a matchup where we just had a horrendous, I'd say it's probably like 30-70 how often Zygarde is able to win against Decidueye Vileplume. Heck, it might even be worse than that, like 20-80, but my opponent didn't draw enough, and I was able to just use 1 and 2 energy attacks to power my way to a victory. So, pretty solid first game, but it was still kind of short, so let's go ahead and try to find another good one with this deck. Alrighty, we found another one against Amezio. I don't even know how to say it, but we do win the coin flip, so we do get to go first, and based on the makeup, I'd say that this is like an Evolution style deck. I mean, you don't normally, I mean, if it was just like Dark, Water, Psychic, and Normal, then I'd say it was like Volcanion, but the fact that it's a Dark, Water, Fire, okay, yeah, we do see its Evolutions for sure. Not sure if I'm going to need Core Enforcer, just because, I mean, I'm able to one-shot the Umbreons anyway with good attacks. So I think what I'm actually going to do, because I have the Hoopa in my hand, is grab the Hitmonchan, because I think that card in particular can help out quite a bit with the prize math. And that's actually exactly why I described that I have it in the deck. So what I'm going to do right here is Hoopa, grab Zygarde, Regirock, and another Shaymin, just cause. I mean, grab the Shaymin just to get it out of my hand, or out of my deck. Play the Fighting Energy onto the Hitmonchan. I mean, hindsight 2020 probably shouldn't have, but whatever. I mean, at least this way. So this is not a great start. I think for the time being, well, I want to Ultra Ball, or... Nah, so I don't get a draw supporter. Bit unfortunate, but, I mean, I'm still in a decent spot, because, I mean, I have Hitmonchan, I have 2 Regirocks, I have a Fighting Energy, and I have Escape Rope and Olympia. Both are ways that I can get the Regirock out of the active. Now, the reason I'm keeping Regirock active is because I want to potentially play my Escape Rope to bring back the Umbreon in if he decided to evolve it in Strafe, or potentially get out of the confusion if my opponent decided to evolve into Espeon, which we do see he did, and Psybeam to where it would confuse my Regirock. So yes, definitely going to go with this play now. Let's Ultra Ball, get rid of the Ultra Ball and the Shaymin, just because those are 2 cards that I really don't need at all at this point. Let's grab another Regirock, just because. And then at this point, I can get a knockout after I play the Strong Energy onto my Zygarde. And then I'm going to Olympia into Zygarde, because this way I can hit him for a Lance Pulse for some pretty decent damage and avoid my Hitmonchan just getting one shot. I want to save my Hitmonchan for finishing off an Espeon, or finishing off an Umbreon or something like that, because Hitmonchan, I mean, first of all, Zygarde's not in any trouble right now. My opponent has a single energy on Espeon. I have another Olympia for later. I have an Escape Rope in my hand as well. So, I mean, I'm in a very good spot. Like, I'm fine with my position right now. Also, Olympia healed 30 damage off of my Regirock, which is just kind of nice in general. But again, this is what I love about this deck. you don't have to just use your supporters for draw support. Don't get me wrong, if I drew it, then I would probably, well actually I would have 100% used the draw support. But, I mean, because I didn't draw into it, I do have options. I do have other options. So what I'm going to do now is, my opponent has 2 energy on the Espeon. I'm going to retreat into Hitmonchan, just go ahead and take the prize given to me. Just see if I can get, like, a draw supporter or something off of my prizes. Well, I get another fighting energy, so that's decent. My opponent will be able to knock out my Hitmonchan. So that's a little unfortunate right there, but at this point, like, it's fine. Hitmonchan did its job. It took a hit, and also is going to allow me to be able to come out favorably in the prize trade, because all the Pokemon that I have left in my deck are EXs. There's not a single non-EX. Hitmonchan was able to come in, get one hit off, take a prize, and now is going to give my opponent a prize, which will not only help the end math later, as in my opponent will be able to take one less card. I mean, he'll be able to take one less card off N, and I'm not going to be any closer to losing. Like, I'm in the exact same spot as I was a turn ago before I put the Hitmonchan down in terms of how close I am to losing the game. So let's Trainers Mail, see if we can get... Oh, we get a Sycamore. So, definitely going to go with that. Play the Zygarde down. So let's go ahead and play Zygarde down. How much is in the discard pile? Just an energy, that's fine. And then you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna go for the energy onto the Zygarde to be able to hit for 60. And ooh, if I get hit this Max Elixir, I'll be able to knock out with Energy Switch. I do not hit it. I mean, I might have been able to hit it if I didn't draw 2 of the basic energy into my hand at the time. But I mean, still, slightly unfortunate, but that's fine. I will just go for a Cell Storm, heal 30 damage off my Zygarde, put my opponent's Espeon into range of just a Lance Pulse next turn, and yeah, in a very, very solid spot. Because, okay, my opponent is... I mean, I saw this last turn, but my opponent is playing Zoroark as well, so it's an Evolution Zoroark build, which... Very, very, very cool deck. I am a big fan of it. Luckily, there's no way for my opponent to get Grass Pokemon into play, which means that he will not be hitting me for weakness, meaning that I am actually in the advantage, or in the advantageous spot at this point. My opponent is going to grab another Zorua, but luckily, at this point, I can just... Yeah, because of my 2 Regirock, even though there hasn't been a Stadium into play yet, because of my Regirock, I will be able to Olympia into my own Zygarde, into my other Zygarde, heal off the 30 damage, and take the knockout on the Espeon. Just simply because the Regirocks were able to increase the damage just enough. So my opponent will Psybeam, trying to buy a turn. That's not going to do him much good, because, okay, let's see if I can hit one of my Max Elixirs. There we go. So it's a turn late, but I mean, better late than never. Let's play the energy onto my Zygarde, go ahead and VS Seeker for my Olympia. And I'm getting a lot of mileage out of Olympia this game. Heal damage off my Zygarde, don't have to worry about Float Stones or discarding energy or anything like that. Go into my other Zygarde, and just go for a Cell Storm to take a knockout. And there we go, there's the Parallel City and a strong energy. So, phenomenal position this turn. I mean, there's no two ways about it. If my opponent just leaves his Zorua up, I can't... Okay, this is kind of a cool play. I can even Energy Switch onto my Regirock from my active Zygarde, knock out the Zorua, and then have a potential Regirock next turn as well. I mean, I'm not going to make that play, but it's just kind of a cool option that I have because of Energy Switch. Now, I know that... Okay, admittedly, I would not put Energy Switch in the deck myself if, like, this was just my deck build, but... Apparently Luke knew something that I didn't, because this one Energy Switch actually opens up so many huge plays that it's pretty ridiculous in my opinion. I love the addition of the one Energy Switch, and even though I don't have Luke's exact list like I said, which I do wish I had, I took a few creative liberties, but I still tried to keep it as close to the original as I could. I mean, admittedly the addition of Hitmonchan was 100% my own thing, but... I mean, I still stand by the addition of Hitmonchan, but still, I mean, Luke's additions of, like, Max Elixir and Energy Switch were two things that I would not inherently think of, but is clearly something that works out incredibly. So my opponent will just switch into his Espeon after ending, and what's awesome about the end, like I said, is that my opponent is not able to draw into 6 cards simply because of the knockout he took on the Hitmonchan, and again, he'll have to still take 3 EX knockouts to win the game. So at this point, how do I want to play this? I think what I'm going to do is Max Elixir. Okay, I whiffed. That's not a big surprise. What do I want to do? So I think I'm going to have to Olympia again this turn. So what I think, yeah, I'm just going to play the energy onto the bench to Zygarde. I have a Kukui for quote-unquote draw support and an extra 20 damage next turn. So I am just going to Olympia into my Zygarde on the bench, heal 30 damage off of that Zygarde, and my opponent's Psybeams are, I mean, apart from making me use Olympia as my supporter for the turn, which, I mean, I suppose works out for my opponent, it's really not doing much for him otherwise. What's really cool about this situation, because even if my opponent decides to go for a Psybeam once again to confuse me, I can't just simply manually retreat my Zygarde into my other Zygarde to be able to Cell Storm for a knockout. So, pretty cool situation right there that I'm in. I know that I usually say, don't manually retreat with Zygarde. You never want to manually retreat. But situations like this, where I've used Olympia enough, I can take a knockout on an Espeon, I can be 1 prize away just by manually retreating, then that's a good enough situation for me. And I mean, heck, I even have a Kukui to be able to get a couple more cards. And I think the only VS Seeker I've gone for is Olympia in this game. That's kind of a cool realization. So what I am going to do is go ahead and manually retreat my Zygarde into my other Zygarde to be able to take the knockout on the Espeon. And do I want to play the Parallel City right here? I don't think so, because I mean, what I could have done is played the Parallel City, gotten rid of the Hoopa and the Shaymin. That way, if my opponent countered my Stadium, I'd have 2 bench spots open, but oh wait, I draw into the Scorched Earth. So I was kind of anticipating playing without the Scorched Earth, but considering that I drew into it, I probably should have gone for the Parallel City play to discard both the Hoopa and the Shaymin. Then I could have countered with Scorched Earth, played the other Regirock down, and then Shaymin for like 6 cards, but oh, whatever, we're fine. My opponent does bring in Zoroark. He will not be able to one-shot my Zygarde, and at this point, I will be able to one-shot him back with my Cell Storm. And even if my opponent Lysandre's up the Shaymin or something and takes a knockout, that won't matter because I have a Shaymin in my hand that I can go ahead and play down to draw into more cards. And also, if he knocks out the Shaymin, actually, you know what? I don't even need to do that, because if my opponent takes a knockout, I can just go right back into my Zygarde, play down my other Regirock, and then knock out my opponent's Zoroark with my Cell Storm. So either way, I think I win. Okay, that is the last card you would ever want to bring up. Like, bring up Hoopa or Shaymin. Like, bringing up Zygarde or Shaymin gets a knockout. Bringing up Hoopa at least makes me have a way of manually retreating with, like, with an Olympia or a Switch or a Float Stone or something like that. But he Lysandered up the Regirock with the Float Stone, and I think my opponent realized his mistake, and that's why he conceded. But yeah, I honestly wonder if that was a misclick. Like, it had to have been. Like, the Regirock was the single play. The free retreating Regirock was the single play that you wouldn't make because, 1, I wouldn't be stuck active, and 2, he wouldn't have been able to take a knockout. So probably just a misclick on my opponent's part. But either way, Luke, awesome deck. I've been thinking that fighting has been dead in the water for a little while. Like, I just think that fighting is not conducive to be successful in this format. However, you showed me that a deck centered around simply the fighting types that everybody already knows with a little bit of a different build can have some success. So kudos to you on that. I hope you don't mind that I used the deck list and took a couple liberties with it. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.